Coming up on The World Today. EU pledges to keep AstraZeneca vaccine doses in the bloc until the company meets its commitments. China bans UK MPs after Uyghur abuse sanctions. And at least 32 people are killed in Egypt train crash. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. The European Union says it'll ensure that coronavirus vaccines produced by AstraZeneca within the bloc stay there until the company returns to fulfilling its delivery commitments. The EU had on Wednesday tightened its oversight of coronavirus vaccine exports, giving it greater scope to block shipments to countries with higher inoculation rates such as Britain, or which are not sharing doses they produce. At a summit on Thursday, the EU gave backing in principle for toughening export controls.
Of course, AstraZeneca has been an issue. I just remind you that we were expecting to have 120 million doses in Q1, and finally we got 30 million. So we had a problem with this company. We'll make sure that everything stays in Europe until the company will come back to its commitments. And this is why we have this instrument that the President of the Commission yesterday again put in place to make sure that we control and we don't have any leakage, if I may say so.
Well, our London correspondent Juliana Olayinka has been monitoring the latest developments. She joins us now for more. Juliana, vaccine rollouts in EU states started sluggishly, and the bloc has blamed pharmaceutical companies, primarily AstraZeneca, for not delivering promised doses. But leaders stopped short of banning exports of vaccines. How does the EU plan to make the company meet its obligations?
Good afternoon, Dr. Well, it's a complicated question. I think it's a complicated answer. It's been a pretty tumultuous row, and I don't think the EU have come out smelling of roses, particularly considering that most of them were battling last night during the summit. But, you know, if we're going to use a quote from French President Emmanuel Macron, the EU bloc were just too naive. They were too naive going into these contracts. One of the main issues that Britain all along had with being a member of the European Union is that there is just so much bureaucracy. And unfortunately, it appears as if that bureaucracy is ultimately what tripped them up when it comes to the distribution and manufacturing. Of course, AstraZeneca, Oxford Scientific AstraZeneca, haven't come out clean of this. They obviously overpromised and they came short of delivering. And this is why the EU are in this mess. There have been so many headlines and quotes from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President. She's tough talking and she's sticking to her guns. And I think just seeing how large and how big this row is will make, hopefully, AstraZeneca step up and, stick to their commitments, particularly as yesterday they also got US President Joe Biden dialing in to their summit, which does show that, of course, the world is behind them, because quite rightly, the EU did point out that they have been exporting millions of doses of various vaccines across the world, and they just want what they deserve, especially because, as we are seeing, the third wave is sweeping across its continent.
Right, so the EU itself is expecting to receive about 30 million AstraZeneca doses, we understand, by the end of March. And that's less than a third of what it was hoping for. Amid the third wave of the pandemic, as you have said there, vaccines are vital for the region. Are there talks to approve and acquire other brands, for example, Russia's Sputnik 5?
Well, the Sputnik 5 a possibility, but I think it's very, very unlikely. Both the French media, French officials and other European officials have dismissed Sputnik. Some officials within the EU have said that Russia and China are using this as some sort of political weight rather than trying to help alleviate the coronavirus crisis. But there are other vaccines. We've spoken about them several times. There's a Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which is quite predominantly manufactured within Germany. There's also the Moderna vaccine as well. And these have got the green light from EU regulators. But the only issue is it costs so much. You know, an AstraZeneca vaccine costs $4 a dose. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine costs $20 a dose, and it has to be stored under very, very, very cold refrigerated temperatures, which means it cannot be distributed as easily. Same with the Moderna. Some of the doses cost $37. So considering that we are facing a global crisis, every single dollar does count, which is why so much emphasis has been put on the Oxford AstraZeneca variant.
And how is the UK affected in responding to all of this back and forth with the EU and AstraZeneca?
Well, yeah, the UK have its own story, of course, even though we are seeing the third wave spread across the continent. The UK does have the highest COVID infection rate and the highest COVID death rate in Europe. We are slowly getting through, well, quite speedily, but we've slowed down the pace of how we're getting through the highest tiers of those who need the vaccine the most. We did have a little bit of breaking news, actually, Joker, before I got into the studio, which did show that the R rate, the rate of infection in the UK, is slowly creeping up. I believe earlier in the week, we had something like 17 deaths. Today, we have 70 deaths. Obviously much lower than the 1,800 we were seeing at the peak of the second wave, but it is slowly creeping here. We did hear from Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday that a third wave in Europe is indeed a third wave in the UK. So with this row, even though on one hand Britain is literally flying the Union Jack, I'm pretty happy that it's been able to successfully roll out the vaccine. We do need these vaccines because we still have a very, very high death rate.
And you, about that breaking news, the death rates, the infection rates, we do know that several European countries are again ramping up restrictions amid the third wave that you're talking about. The UK is on a cautious path to easing its lockdown. With the latest developments, are we likely to see tighter restrictions in the coming days? What are you hearing?
Well, you know, if there were to be any tightening of restrictions, I think there would literally be riots on the streets, and not of the streets of inner city London, or the streets and the backbenches in the House of Commons. Yesterday, we had a pretty long debate in the House of Commons about extending some of these extra measures that the government have been able to impose to protect the public from COVID-19. A lot of Conservative MPs not happy. They feel it goes against their civil liberties. But Boris Johnson did say when he first announced the drawing back of these restrictions that they were irreversible, which is one of the reasons why when we were given these dates of when we could get ourselves out of the lockdown, these dates were not set in stone. We do have a further easing of restrictions that will be taking place on Monday. So from Monday in England, you will be able to meet with up to 6 people in your back garden and with another member of a different household in your home. That is likely to happen. But with this breaking news, we are hearing that the rate of infection is creeping up and we only have children back in schools. Who knows whether or not Brits will be sunning themselves on the beaches in the summer, or whether or not we will be able to open the non-essential retail and the hospitality sector, which is scheduled to be on the 12th of April.
Well, thank you for those updates. Our London correspondent, Juliana Olainka. In the meantime, health officials in Germany are warning that the country could see up to 100,000 infections a day if the third wave of the coronavirus spreads unchecked. As a result, officials have introduced new measures such as random checks and compulsory tests at the border with France. Germany is among a number of European countries where COVID infections have been rising fast this week. Cases are also up in Poland by 35%. And health officials in both countries say the spread of the UK variant is behind the surge. Here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
Germany will require everyone entering the country by plane to undergo a coronavirus test starting on Monday night. Previously, only travelers from high-risk areas were required to present a negative test. The measure comes as health officials say there are clear signs that the current wave of coronavirus infections in Germany could be worse than the first two. Over in France, officials say hospitals in Paris are under heavy strain and are already pushing the limits to welcome more patients. The number of COVID-19 patients in intensive care is now close to the mid-November high of 4,919, though still well below more than 7,000 people in ICU during France's first coronavirus lockdown in the spring of 2020. 19 French regions are under tightened COVID-19 restrictions, including Paris region. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has banned all inland travel in and out of 5 counties, including the capital in Nairobi, to stop a surge of COVID-19 cases. No road, rail or air transport will be allowed until further notice. Kenya's COVID-19 positivity rate has jumped from 2% to 22% between January and March. The president says at least 7 people are dying every day from COVID-19. In Nairobi, 6 out of 10 people test positive for COVID-19. Argentina will suspend flights from Brazil, Chile and Mexico starting Saturday to prevent the spread of different strains of the coronavirus from entering the country. Travelers returning from abroad will also be tested for COVID-19 before boarding the flight. Upon arrival and 7 days later, a similar measure is already in place for flights from the United Kingdom. And finally, Brazil's Butantan Biomedical Institute is seeking approval to begin human trials for potential COVID-19 vaccine, making it the first shot developed in the country to reach clinical testing. Sao Paulo governor says the goal is to begin inoculations with the vaccine in July.
In other news, China has imposed sanctions on 9 UK citizens, including 5 MPs, for spreading what it calls lies and disinformation about the country. The group are among the most vocal critics of China in the UK. It comes in retaliation for measures taken by the UK government on Monday over human rights abuses against Uyghur Muslim minority group. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says Britain stands in solidarity with the individuals sanctioned, adding that the Chinese ambassador in London will be summoned. Meanwhile, China is targeting more Western clothes retailers as international backlash grows over claims of abuses in the cotton-growing Jiangxi province. Several major brands have expressed concern over allegations that members of a mostly Muslim Uyghur minority group are being used as forced labor. Some companies' online shops are blocked and their stores have vanished from some digital maps. It comes after several Western countries imposed sanctions on China. And North Korea says the missiles it launched on Thursday were a new type tactical guided projectile. It was the country's first ballistic launch in almost a year, the first since Joe Biden became U.S. president. Mr. Biden has said that the U.S. will respond accordingly. This comes as the U.S., Japan and South Korea have condemned the tests. Under UN Security Council resolutions, North Korea is banned from testing ballistic missiles. In its first statement since the test, North Korea says the 2 weapons struck a test target 600 kilometers off North Korea's east coast, disputing Japanese assessments that they flew just over 400 kilometers. It added that the new missiles is able to carry a payload of 2.5 tons, which would make it capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Elsewhere, India Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 2-day visit to Bangladesh to attend its Golden Jubilee celebration of independence. He was welcomed to Bangladesh by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina at the airport in Dhaka, and witnessed the laying of a wreath at the National Martyrs Memorial, paying respect to the soldiers killed in the Bangladesh War of Independence in 1971. But his visit has sparked violent protests at Dakar's main mosque. Hundreds were dispersed by police using tear gas and rubber bullets. Scores of people were also injured after clashes broke out between groups of demonstrators. The protesters accused Prime Minister Modi of stoking religious tensions. Mr. Modi's two-day tour, his first abroad since the coronavirus pandemic began last year, will cap Dakar's 10-day celebrations, already attended by leaders from Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Maldives. Still to come on the program. Race against time. Time waits for no man, but a German man is racing against time to change his hundreds of clocks. More detail in just a few moments. That's me. Welcome back. Some sad news from Egypt, where at least 32 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in a train crash in the central part of the country. The country's railway authority says two carriages derailed and overturned when two passenger trains collided in the province of Sohag. Emergency brakes were activated on the train in front by unknown individuals, causing the train behind to crash into it. Officials are investigating the cause of the crash. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi says there would be serious consequences for anyone found responsible. In East Africa, Tanzania's late President John Magufuli has been buried in his northwestern home village of Chato. Mr. Magufuli died last Wednesday after a mysterious absence of almost 2 weeks. The Tanzanian authorities say Mr. Magufuli, one of Africa's most prominent coronavirus skeptics, died from a heart failure. Earlier this week, African leaders paid tribute to him during a funeral ceremony. Among them were Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi, Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta, and Zimbabwe's Emmerson Mnangagwa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered a eulogy where he praised the late Magufuli as a tireless champion of the cause of African progress. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed says Eritrea has agreed to withdraw its troops from Tigray following a military offensive in the region that drew condemnation. Mr. Abiy earlier this week acknowledged for the first time that Eritrean troops crossed the border after months of denial. He told MPs that Eritrean forces came fearing they would be attacked by Tigray's regional fighters. In a statement on Friday, the Prime Minister says discussions with Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki had resolved with Ethiopian forces will take over guarding the border areas effective immediately. It also adds that Ethiopia and Eritrea will continue strengthening their bilateral relations and economic cooperation ambitions.
Violence. The statement did not address the wide...
Well, convening his first formal news conference on Thursday night, U.S. President Joe Biden stepped into a swirl of issues that have bubbled up at the 2-month mark of his presidency, which has been almost exclusively focused until now on confronting the coronavirus pandemic. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird, has all the highlights.
During U.S. President Joe Biden's first formal press conference since taking office over 65 days ago, he states that he plans to run in 2024.
No, the answer is yes. My plan is to run for re-election. That's my expectation.
You also just made some news by saying that you are going to run for re-election.
I said that is my expectation.
So is that a yes, that you are running for re-election?
Look, I don't know where you guys come from, man. I've never been able to travel. I'm a great respecter of fate. I've never been able to plan 3.5 years ahead for certain.
And if you do run, will Vice President Harris be on your ticket?
I would fully expect that to be the case. She's doing a great job. She's a great partner. She's a great partner.
And do you believe you'll be running against former President Trump?
Oh, come on. I don't even think about it. I have no idea. I have no idea whether there'll be a Republican Party.
President Biden also spent time discussing the issues of immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Well, look, I guess I should be flattered. People are coming because I'm the nice guy. That's the reason why it's happening. That I'm a decent man, or however it's phrased. That, that's why they're coming, because no, Biden's a good guy. Truth of the matter is, nothing has changed. As many people came, 28% increase in children to the border in my administration, 31% in the last year in 2019 before the pandemic in the Trump administration. It happens every single solitary year.
U.S. foreign affairs were one of the highlights, specifically the tension between the U.S. and China.
I've known Xi Jinping for a long time. Allegedly, by the time I left office as vice president, I had spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader had. When I was elected and he called to congratulate me, I think to the surprise of the China experts who were his people on the call as well as mine, listening, we had a 2-hour conversation for 2 hours. And we made several things clear to one another. I made it clear to him again, what I've told him in person on several occasions, that we're not looking for confrontation, although we know there will be steep competition. 2, that we'll have strong competition, but we'll insist that China play by the international rules.
Many in Washington were anxiously awaiting this press conference, but left underwhelmed as issues of COVID-19 and the economy were not tackled. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
Well, as they say, time waits for no man, especially not at 2 a.m. on Sunday, when daylight saving puts the clocks forward by an hour for summertime. Well, that's for the Central European time. Well, retired Lufthansa chef Werner Stechbath may now have all the time in the world for his hobby. But with 365 clocks to change by Sunday, he has quite a job on his hands. The 74-year-old, who has been collecting clocks since 1975, used to throw clock parties to get people helping with the change back in the day when he was younger. Now he works alone, lovingly caressing his collection, which was started by his mother, who wanted to bring him a souvenir back from one of their holidays. Although he now has no room for any more clocks in his 20-square-meter apartment, he makes no exception, adding one extra clock in a leap year. He says his mother used to tell him, "Time goes faster than you think. Enjoy each day you have." And indeed, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for watching The World today. I'm Joker Rogers. Bye for now.